The scream echoed through the aircraft cabin as Victor Volkov's boot connected with the flight attendant's stomach. Gasp! Hilda Morrison crashed against the narrow aisle, her petite frame crumpling between rows 14 and 15. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead, seeping into the navy blue carpet of the Boeing 737. Her stunningly beautiful face, marked by distinctive Russian features and natural freckles across her porcelain cheeks, contorted in pain. Loose curls from her messy high bun fell across her captivating green eyes. Shouting, "On your knees, now!" Victor's voice boomed through the cabin, his Makarov pistol sweeping across 180 terrified passengers.
Begin!
The man stood 6 feet 4 inches tall, shoulders broad enough to fill the aisle, scarred hands steady as granite. His accent carried traces of Moscow winters and Chechen battlefields. Serious tone. United Airlines Flight 2847 from Denver to Miami had been airborne for exactly 53 minutes. Cruising altitude, 35,000 feet. Distance to nearest landing strip, 412 miles. Time since the cockpit breach, 90 seconds. Number of hijackers, 4. Chance of survival. According to statistics, dropping by the second, Hilda's trembling hands gripped the armrest of seat 14C as she pulled herself up. Pauses. Her fitted gray United Airlines uniform shirt was torn at the shoulder, blood staining the collar. The dark military-style pants she wore were scuffed from the fall. Brown combat boots scraped against the floor as she struggled to find her footing, whispering, "Please." Her voice came out barely above a whisper, perfectly calibrated to sound weak, terrified. "Please don't hurt anyone. There are children on board." Marcus Jefferson, the second hijacker, grabbed a fistful of her light brown hair and yanked her head back. Gulps. The snake tattoo coiling around his thick neck seemed to writhe as his muscles tensed. Prison ink covered both arms, Pelican Bay State Penitentiary class of 2019 clearly visible on his left forearm. "This one's gonna be our messenger. Anyone tries anything stupid, she bleeds first." In first class, separated by a thin curtain that did nothing to muffle the chaos, Commander Jake Sullivan of SEAL Team 6 sat perfectly still in Seat 2A. 20 years of combat operations from Fallujah to Helmand Province had taught him to observe before acting. His trained eyes tracked every movement through the wap in the curtain. Something was off about the flight attendant's fall, the way her shoulder rolled to absorb impact, the way her legs positioned to protect vital organs, the way her breathing remained controlled despite apparent panic. She didn't fall. She executed a textbook combat role. Behind Sullivan, in Seat 3B, Ispao, Dr. Patricia Hayes, trauma surgeon at Denver General for 15 years, noticed something else. The blood pattern was wrong, head wounds bled profusely, yet this woman's bleeding had already slowed to a trickle. Either she had unusual clotting factors, or she'd applied pressure to specific points that only someone with advanced medical training would know. The third hijacker, Diego Ramirez, moved through the premium economy section like a predator stalking prey. Sinaloa cartel enforcer turned freelance terrorist. The DEA had a $3 million bounty on his head. His hands bore the telltale scars of someone who had survived too many knife fights. He collected cell phones from passengers, dropping them into a canvas bag. Anyone holds back, anyone tries to make a call. He pulled out a serrated combat knife, the blade catching the cabin lights. "I start with fingers." Carlos Mendez controlled the rear section near the emergency exits. Ex-Venezuelan special forces, dishonorably discharged for selling weapons to rebels. He'd killed his first man at 16 in the slums of Caracas. At 42, his body count had stopped mattering. He positioned himself strategically, blocking both rear exits while maintaining clear sight lines to the forward cabin. Victor's voice crackled over the cabin intercom system. "Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. This aircraft is now under our control. The pilots are cooperating. You will all remain seated with your hands visible. Any attempt at heroics will result in immediate execution." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the passengers like a shroud. "We have a simple demand. $50 million transferred to our accounts within 2 hours. Your government has been notified. Until then, you belong to us." On the ground at FBI headquarters in Washington, Special Agent Rachel Torres stared at her computer screen in confusion. The facial recognition software had been running for 12 minutes, searching for matches on the crew manifest. 3 flight attendants were on duty for UA-2847. Jennifer Martinez, clean, 15 years with United. Robert Chang, clean, 8 years of service. Hilda Morrison, no record found. That's impossible, Torres muttered, running the search again. Every United Airlines employee required extensive background checks, fingerprinting, TSA clearance. Yet the system showed nothing. No employment records, no identification matches, no social security number on file. She picked up her secure phone. "Director, we have a problem. One of the flight attendants doesn't exist." Back on the plane, Hilda had been forced to serve water to the hijackers. She moved down the aisle with a serving tray, her movements deliberately clumsy, submissive. But Commander Sullivan caught the subtle details. The way she shifted her weight from heel to toe, silent footfalls despite the heavy boots. The way she kept her center of gravity low and balanced. The way her eyes tracked multiple targets simultaneously while appearing to stare at the floor. That wasn't a flight attendant's walk. That was a tactical advance. Marcus shoved an elderly passenger, sending the man's glasses flying. "You looked at me wrong, old man." He raised his fist. "Wait!" Hilda stepped between them, her voice still playing the part of the terrified civilian. "Please, he has a heart condition. I saw his medication when he boarded. If something happens to him, you'll have a medical emergency that could compromise your plan." Marcus backhanded her across the face. She spun with the blow, dissipating its force while making it look worse than it was. She collapsed against row 18, her hand briefly brushing against the underside of the armrest. Sullivan saw it clearly. She was checking for something, counting rows, calculating distances. In the cockpit, Captain Rebecca Hayes tried to steady her breathing. 23 years of flying commercial aircraft, 12 years in the Air Force before that, and she'd never had a gun to her head until today. Victor stood behind her, the Makarov's barrel occasionally touching the base of her skull. "Maintain heading and altitude," Victor ordered. "Any deviation from flight plan, any attempt to signal—" "I understand," Rebecca cut him off, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "But I need to make routine position reports or ATC will know something's wrong." Victor considered this. "Make your report. Standard phraseology only. I speak English perfectly, Captain. One wrong word, and your co-pilot loses his kneecap." First Officer Timothy Chen, 28 years old, married for 3 years with twins on the way, sat frozen in his seat. The cold metal of Diego's knife pressed against his carotid artery. One wrong move, 3 seconds to unconsciousness, 12 seconds to death. Rebecca keyed the radio. "Denver Center, United 2847, level at flight level 350, position DANDD intersection." "United 2847, Denver Center, roger. Report Hotia N intersection." "Wilco, United 2847. The exchange sounded routine, but Rebecca had subtly emphasized specific words. Any controller worth their salt would notice the pattern. She'd just transmitted a coded distress signal using stress emphasis on syllables. Whether anyone caught it remained to be seen. Back in the cabin, a pregnant woman in row 24 started hyperventilating. Her husband frantically called out, "She needs help! Please, she's 7 months pregnant!" Hilda immediately moved toward them, but Carlos blocked her path. "No one moves." "She could go into premature labor," Hilda said, her voice taking on a different quality, authoritative, medical. "If she does, you'll have a medical emergency that requires an immediate landing. That ruins your timeline." Carlos hesitated, then stepped aside. Hilda knelt beside the woman, her fingers finding the radial pulse instantly. "Breathe with me. In through your nose, hold for 4, out through your mouth." Her hands moved to specific pressure points, techniques that weren't taught in standard first aid courses. Within 30 seconds, the woman's breathing stabilized. Dr. Hayes watched from 3 rows back. Those weren't flight attendant skills. Those were combat medic techniques, specifically designed for field treatment of panic attacks in hostile environments. Marcus noticed the doctor watching and strutted over. "You got a problem, lady?" "No, no problem at all," Hayes replied quickly. "Good, because the next person who looks at me wrong—" He pulled out a tactical baton, extending it with a metallic snap. The aircraft hit turbulence, mild chop that any frequent flyer would ignore. But Hilda's response was telling. While passengers grabbed armrests and the hijackers widened their stances, she simply shifted her weight minutely, riding the motion like a sailor on a familiar sea. Her money automatically compensated for each pitch and roll. Sullivan made a mental note. Fighter pilots. They developed that specific balance after thousands of hours in aircraft pulling high G maneuvers. Commercial flight attendants grabbed in onto something during turbulence. This woman moved like the aircraft was an extension of her body. 15 minutes passed. The hijackers had established their rhythm. Victor in the cockpit, Marcus patrolling first class and forward economy, Diego controlling the middle section, Carlos watching the rear. They moved with military precision, overlapping fields of fire, maintaining communication through hand signals. These weren't amateurs. Hilda was forced to assist with their propaganda video. Victor positioned her in front of the forward galley, while Marcus held a phone. "Read exactly what's on this paper," Victor commanded, handing her a prepared statement. She took the paper, her hands shaking convincingly, but Sullivan noticed she held it at a specific angle, not quite facing the camera. She was minimizing facial recognition potential while appearing compliant. "My name is Hilda Morrison," she read, her voice trembling. "I am a flight attendant on United Airlines Flight 2847. We have been taken hostage by armed men. They have treated us according to their demands being met. The United States government has 2 hours to transfer $50 million or—" She paused, swallowing hard. The pause was perfectly timed, making her seem terrified while actually breaking up the video's usability for propaganda. "Continue," Victor growled. "Victor, or there will be consequences." Marcus stopped recording. "Good. Now, sit down and shut up." Hilda returned to the jump seat near row 15, her head down, playing the broken victim perfectly. But her eyes were busy, counting passengers, noting positions, calculating angles. "Did you catch that detail? Comment if you noticed what she was really doing during that video." FBI headquarters had become a hive of activity. Director James Patterson stood behind Agent Torres as she worked through databases. "Still nothing on Morrison?" he asked. "It gets stranger, sir. I found a Hilda Morrison in our system, but she died in Afghanistan in 2009. Air Force pilot, A-10 Thunderbolt. Killed in action during close air support mission." Patterson frowned. "Someone's using a dead pilot's identity? Or someone wants us to think she's dead," Torres replied. "I'm running facial recognition against military databases now, but I need higher clearance." "You have it, whatever you need." The search expanded to classified military personnel files. Torres input the facial features captured from the passenger manifest photo: high cheekbones, green eyes, distinctive bone structure. The system churned through millions of records. Meanwhile, on the aircraft, something shifted in the dynamic. A 6-year-old boy in row 12 started crying uncontrollably. His mother tried to quiet him, terrified of attracting attention. Diego stormed over. "Shut that kid up." "He's scared," the mother pleaded. "Please, he's just a baby." "I said shut him up." Diego raised his hand. Hilda moved before anyone could react, intercepting Diego's arm with her shoulder as she stumbled into him. "I'm sorry! The turbulence! I lost my balance!" Diego shoved her hard against the overhead bins. Her head hit with a crack that made passengers gasp. But Sullivan saw the truth. She'd turned at the last microsecond, taking the impact on the reinforced part of her skull rather than the temple. "Clumsy cow," Diego spat. Hilda slid to the floor, apparently dazed, but her fall positioned her perfectly to observe all 4 hijackers' positions simultaneously. Her right hand pressed against her ribs as if in pain. But Sullivan recognized the motion. She was checking for weapons, confirming nothing was there, maintaining her cover. The child had stopped crying, distracted by the violence. His mother pulled him close, whispering prayers. Victor's voice came over the intercom again. 1 hour and 30 minutes remaining. To demonstrate our seriousness. He paused dramatically. "Bring me the co-pilot." Diego dragged Timothy Chen from the cockpit, forcing him to his knees in the forward galley, where all passengers could see. The young officer's face was pale but determined. "Please," Captain Hayes' voice carried from the cockpit. "He has nothing to do with this. He has a family." "Everyone has a family," Victor replied coldly. "That's what makes leverage work." He chambered around in the Makarov, the metallic click echoing through the silent cabin. Passengers began sobbing. Parents covered their children's eyes. "Wait." Hilda stood slowly, her hand pressed to her injured ribs. "Take me instead." Victor laughed, a sound like grinding ice. "You? What value do you have?" "I'm crew. The airline will pay more for crew than passengers. Insurance policies are different. I'm worth more to you alive, but if you need to make an example..." She stepped forward, each movement calculated to seem unsteady, weak. "I volunteer." Marcus grabbed her arm, squeezing hard enough to leave bruises. "Brave little bird wants to play hero?" "No," she said quietly, making eye contact with Timothy Chen. "I just don't want to watch anyone die today." The moment stretched taut as piano wire. Victor studied her with the cold assessment of a man who had executed dozens. Something flickered in his eyes, not mercy, but calculation. "Interesting." He lowered the gun slightly. "Tell me, Miss Morrison, why does a flight attendant speak of insurance policies and liability values?" "My ex-husband was a lawyer," she replied smoothly. "Aviation law. I learned more than I wanted during the divorce." It was a perfect lie, specific enough to be credible, vague enough to be unverifiable. Victor circled her like a shark. "You know what I think? I think you're not quite what you seem." The cabin held its collective breath, Hilda's cover balanced on a knife's edge. "I think," Victor continued, reaching out to touch her face, "you're much braver than a simple flight attendant should be." She flinched at his touch, selling the performance. "I'm terrified. But if someone has to die, better me than him. He has babies on the way." For a long moment, Victor studied her. Then he shoved her back toward Marcus. "Put her with the others. The co-pilot stays where I can see him." Timothy Chen was dragged back into the cockpit, reprieve for now. Hilda collapsed into an empty seat, her whole body shaking. To the passengers, she looked like someone coming down from an adrenaline spike. Sullivan knew better. She was analyzing Victor's psychology, updating her threat assessment. The plane flew on through the afternoon sky, a metal tube full of terror hurtling through space at 500 miles per hour. Below, the ground team scrambled to respond. Fighter jets from Buckley Air Force Base had been scrambled, maintaining a discreet distance while NORAD tracked every movement. In the cabin, Marcus decided to have some entertainment. He grabbed a businessman from row 8, expensive suit, Rolex watch, soft hands that had never seen real work. "You look rich," Marcus said. "Empty your pockets." The man complied shakily, producing a wallet, phone, and car keys. Marcus flipped through the wallet. "David Steinberg, Executive Vice President." He laughed. "Bet you're used to giving orders, not taking them." "Please, I have money. I can pay..." Marcus's fist connected with Steinberg's solar plexus, dropping him to his knees. "I didn't ask for your money, suit." Hilda watched from her position near row 15. Her fingers drummed against her thigh, but Sullivan caught the pattern. She was tapping out something in code. Morse? No, something else. Military tactical hand signals translated to micro movements. Dr. Hayes had moved slightly, trying to help Steinberg, but Diego blocked her. "Sit down, doctor." "How did you know I'm a doctor?" "Your hands. The way you've been watching everyone for injuries. The way you keep reaching for a medical bag that isn't there." Diego smiled coldly. "I've spent time in enough field hospitals to recognize a surgeon." Another data point for the FBI analysts who would eventually review this. These hijackers had military or paramilitary backgrounds. They recognized professional traits. They moved with tactical awareness. Carlos called out from the rear, 45 minutes to drop zone." Drop zone. Not destination, not airport. Drop zone. Sullivan's mind raced. They weren't planning to land normally. This was going to be a tactical extraction. Probably a low-altitude jump over water. That's why they hadn't demanded a specific airport. They were planning to bail out and let the plane crash. Hilda caught it too. Her expression didn't change, but her breathing pattern shifted. She was preparing for something. The turbulence increased as they flew through a weather system. The plane bucked and rolled, causing passengers to cry out. The hijackers adjusted their stances expertly. These men were used to unstable platforms. But Hilda moved differently. She flowed with the motion, her body anticipating each shift before it happened. Once, when a particularly violent drop caused everyone to grab something, she simply shifted her weight and remained perfectly balanced. Victor noticed from the cockpit doorway, his eyes narrowed. "Morrison," he called out. "Come here." She stood carefully, playing up a limp from her earlier fall. She moved forward, passing Sullivan's row. For just a fraction of a second, their eyes met. She blinked twice. A signal. "Be ready." "Yes?" she asked Victor, voice small and scared. "You move strangely for a flight attendant," he observed. "I teach yoga on my days off," she replied. "Balance and flexibility. It helps with the long shifts. Victor grabbed her wrist, examining her hands, looking for calluses, scars, tells. Hilda had prepared for this. Her hands were soft, manicured, but he missed what Sullivan could see from his angle, the microfractures in her knuckles that had healed over time, the slight thickening of the bone that came from years of strike training. Yoga, Victor repeated skeptically. Hot yoga specifically, she elaborated. There's a studio on Colfax Avenue in Denver, Pure Power Yoga. I can give you the instructor's name. The specificity sold it. Liars gave vague answers. Truth-tellers provided details. But then Carlos found something. Boss! He held up a small electronic device from under seat 23B. Someone had a satellite phone. Victor's face darkened. He grabbed his cabin microphone. Who does this belong to? Silence. I will ask once more. Then I start shooting people until someone answers. An elderly veteran in row 23 slowly raised his hand. It's mine. I forgot I had it. I'm sorry. I'm hard of hearing and... Victor crossed the cabin in 4 strides and pressed the gun to the old man's temple. You're lying. No, please, The gunshot never came. Instead, Hilda stumbled again, this time spilling a full tray of drinks across Victor and the veteran. In the chaos of Victor cursing and wiping orange juice from his eyes, the satellite phone disappeared. Sullivan saw it clearly. Hilda had palmed it and dropped it into the trash cart in one smooth motion. You stupid woman! Victor backhanded her, sending her sprawling. This time she didn't roll with it. She took the full force, letting her lips split, letting the blood flow. She needed to look helpless, beaten. But Sullivan saw her tongue check her teeth, counting, making sure none were loose. Professional fighters did that automatically. Marcus laughed. Boss, she's just clumsy. Look at her. Hilda lay crumpled between the seats, blood running from her lip and nose, the perfect picture of a victim. But her eyes tracked everything, every one. She was memorizing positions, calculating distances, preparing. FBI headquarters had gone into overdrive. Agent Torres's screen flashed with a priority alert from the Department of Defense. Director Patterson, you need to see this. On the screen was a classified file, black bar redacted but still readable. Lieutenant Colonel Hilda Catherine Morrison, United States Air Force. Not dead. That was disinformation. Deep cover operative inserted into civilian positions to track terrorist cells. Specialty, combat aviation and close quarters combat. Current assignment, classified. Handler, classified. Mission parameters, classified. Holy cow, Patterson breathed. She's one of ours. It gets better, Torres continued. Look at her service record. Afghanistan, 2008 through 2010. 37 confirmed close air support missions. 7 aircraft kills, enemy helicopters, and 1 fighter jet. The kill marks on her service record matched something Patterson had seen before. Pilots who painted kills on their aircraft. 7 red stars. She's not just a pilot, Torres said. She's an ace. And look at this. She pulled up another file. Cross-trained with Delta Force for 6 months. Qualified expert in 17 different weapon systems. And here's the kicker. She was supposed to be on a completely different flight today. Patterson's blood ran cold. She knew this was going to happen. Which means she's not a victim, Torres concluded. She's hunting them. Back on the plane, the deadline approached, 30 minutes remaining. The hijackers grew more agitated. Their plan's timeline was critical, and delays meant exposure. Victor made another announcement. Your government has failed to respond. We will now demonstrate consequences. He nodded to Marcus, who grabbed Jennifer Martinez, the actual flight attendant. The woman sobbed as she was dragged to the front of the cabin. Please, no, Jennifer cried. I have children. Then your government should have paid, Victor replied coldly. Hilda stood up slowly. You're making a mistake. Everyone turned to stare at her. Blood still ran from her split lip. Her uniform was torn and stained. She looked like she could barely stand, but her voice carried a different quality now. Steady, certain. Sit down, Diego commanded, moving toward her. In approximately 10 minutes, Hilda continued, as if he hadn't spoken, 2 F-16 fighters from the 140th Wing will achieve missile lock on this aircraft. She wiped blood from her mouth with the back of her hand. Your window for negotiation is closing. Victor's eyes narrowed. How could you possibly know that? Hilda's personality shifted like tectonic plates grinding into new positions. The scared flight attendant evaporated. In her place stood someone who'd seen war, survived it, and come back for more. Because I've been tracking you since Denver, Viktor Volkov. Former Spetsnaz, discharged for selling weapons to Chechen rebels. Your brother Dmitry is waiting in Havana with a boat. The $50 million was never going to a political cause. It's for weapons to supply 3 different terrorist cells. The cabin went dead silent, except for the drone of engines. Viktor raised his weapon. Who are you? That's when Hilda made her move. Not toward Viktor, that would have been expected. She dove backward, rolling behind the drink cart while her hand found the hidden panel Sullivan had been watching her check earlier. Emergency equipment storage, but her fingers knew exactly where to press. A tactical knife dropped into her palm, standard aircraft emergency equipment that she'd identified during her earlier reconnaissance. In the same motion, she kicked the drink cart forward, sending it careening into Diego's knees. The big man stumbled, his weapon discharging into the ceiling. Passengers screamed. The decompression alarm shrieked as pressurized air began venting through the bullet hole. Oxygen masks dropped from overhead compartments. Chaos erupted as passengers fought to put them on. In the confusion, Hilda moved like liquid mercury. She crossed 12 feet in under 2 seconds, her knife finding the pressure point in Diego's wrist that made him drop his gun. Marcus turned to shoot her, but Commander Sullivan had already moved. The SEAL's hand chopped down on Marcus's weapon arm, sending the gun spinning across the cabin floor. "Everyone down!" Hilda commanded, her voice cutting through panic with military authority. But Viktor had reached Captain Hayes. His gun pressed against her temple as he dragged her from the pilot's seat. "Everyone stops or she dies." Hilda froze, the tactical knife still in her hand. Diego and Marcus were both down, Sullivan restraining them with zip-tie cuffs he had somehow produced. Carlos remained in the rear, weapon trained on passengers. The standoff crystallized. Viktor with the captain, Carlos covering the rear, Hilda in the middle, no longer hiding who she was. "Interesting," Viktor said slowly. "The little flight attendant has teeth." "Let the captain go," Hilda said. "You're blown. The mission's over." "The mission is never over," Viktor replied. "And you've shown yourself too early, little bird." He was right. She'd moved to save Jennifer, but in doing so, she'd revealed her capabilities before neutralizing all threats. Classic tactical error, emotion overriding strategy. Carlos called out from the rear, "Boss, we've got company!" Through the windows, passengers could see them. 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons in formation, close enough to see the pilots. They maintained perfect spacing, ready to engage if ordered. Viktor smiled coldly. "They won't shoot with passengers aboard." "They will if you breach the cockpit door completely," Hilda countered. Homeland Security Protocol 7. Better a controlled shoot-down over unpopulated areas than another September 11. Truth or bluff, even Sullivan couldn't tell. But Hilda's voice carried absolute conviction. The plane's intercom crackled to life with an external transmission. "United 2847. This is Colonel James Morrison, United States Air Force. We have you in sight. Stand by for instructions." Morrison, the same last name as Hilda. Viktor caught it too. "Morrison, relation of yours?" Hilda's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Never met him." Another lie. Sullivan could see it in the micro-expressions she couldn't quite control. This was personal for her in ways that went beyond the mission. "Tell them to back off," Viktor commanded, "or I start executing passengers." Hilda keyed the intercom. "Falcon led, this is..." She paused for a fraction of a second, then continued. "Valkyrie 7. Situation contained but critical. 4 hostiles, 179 passengers plus crew. Request you maintain current position." Valkyrie 7. Sullivan recognized military call signs when he heard them. This wasn't just any operative. This was someone the fighters knew, someone they had worked with. The response came immediately. "Valkyrie 7, Falcon lead. Confirm your status." "Green but red," Hilda replied. It meant operational but compromised. Viktor's eyes darted between Hilda and the radio. He was calculating, reassessing. The plan was unraveling, but he still had leverage. That's when Carlos made a fatal error. He grabbed the pregnant woman from row 24, dragging her forward as additional insurance. Her husband lunged after them, and Carlos struck him down with the butt of his weapon. The pregnant woman cried out, clutching her belly. "Something's wrong! The baby!" Dr. Hayes stood up, despite the danger. "She's going into premature labor. The stress. She needs immediate medical attention." "Sit down!" Carlos shouted. But Hilda had already started moving, not fast, not threatening. She walked steadily toward Carlos, her hands visible, but her presence somehow expanding to fill the space. "You're about to have a medical emergency that will force this plane to land immediately," she said calmly. "That ruins your extraction timeline. Your boat won't wait. Dimitri won't wait." Carlos hesitated, the gun wavering between Hilda and the pregnant woman. "Let the doctor help her," Hilda continued, still approaching. "Or in about 3 minutes, you'll have a delivery happening at 35,000 feet, with complications neither of us can control." She was close now, close enough that Carlos had to choose, shoot her or back down. Victor made the choice for him. "Let the doctor work. We don't need complications." Dr. Hayes rushed forward, immediately attending to the pregnant woman. But as she passed Hilda, she whispered something Sullivan couldn't catch. Hilda's eyes flickered, message received. The balance had shifted. 2 hijackers down, 2 remaining but separated. The fighters outside maintaining pressure, the deadline approaching with no money transferred. And in the middle of it all, Hilda stood revealed, but not yet fully exposed. The passengers still didn't understand who she really was, only that she was more than she'd seemed. Marcus groaned from where Sullivan had him restrained, coming back to consciousness. His eyes focused on Hilda with raw hatred. "You lying witch! You're going to do nothing," Sullivan cut him off, applying pressure to a nerve cluster that made Marcus gasp. "Former military?" Marcus glared but said nothing. "Yeah, thought so," Sullivan continued. "Probably discharged for conduct. You've got that couldn't follow orders look about you." Meanwhile, Hilda had returned to a neutral position where she could observe both Victor and Carlos. Her stolen tactical knife had disappeared, hidden but accessible. She stood with the deceptive stillness of a predator conserving energy before the final strike. The digital clock on the bulkhead showed 20 minutes to deadline, but everyone who understood tactics knew the real deadline had already passed. The moment the fighters achieved lock, the moment Hilda revealed herself, the moment the first hijacker fell, the operation had failed. Now it was about survival, theirs and the passengers. Victor seemed to realize this. His demeanor shifted from controlled to desperate. "New plan," he announced. "We're changing course. Captain, turn south toward Mexico." "I can't," Rebecca Hayes replied from the cockpit. "We don't have fuel for that deviation." "Then we land at the nearest airport." "With 2 F-16s escorting us," Hilda interjected. "They'll never clear you for approach. The moment we descend toward any populated area without authorization, they engage." It was a chess match now, moves and counter-moves. Victor had hostages but no exit. Hilda had revealed capabilities but not position. The fighters had authority but constraints. In her peripheral vision, Hilda caught movement. A passenger in row 19 had been quiet the whole time, unremarkable, was shifting slightly. His hand moved to his ankle in a way that suggested either medical issue or concealed weapon. She filed it away. Unknown variable. Dr. Hayes worked on the pregnant woman, but her movements were strange. She kept checking her watch, timing something. When she caught Hilda looking, she held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. A countdown to something. The aircraft hit another pocket of turbulence, this time severe. The plane dropped suddenly, throwing everyone who wasn't seated or holding on. Victor stumbled, his gun wavering from the captain's head. In that instant of imbalance, multiple things happened simultaneously. The passenger in row 19 drew a concealed pistol, air marshal, who'd been playing civilian. Dr. Hayes injected something into Carlos's leg as she fell against him. The pregnant woman had never been in real labor. Sullivan broke free from Marcus completely, putting him in a sleeper hold, and Hilda moved. She didn't run or leap or dive. She flowed like water, finding the fastest path downhill. Her hand found Victor's wrist, applying torque that broke his grip on the weapon. Her knee connected with his solar plexus, driving air from his lungs. Her elbow struck the vagus nerve in his neck, causing immediate disorientation. The gun fell. She caught it before it hit the ground, safed it, and disassembled it in 3 practiced motions, the pieces scattering across the floor. Victor swung at her with trained precision, but she wasn't there anymore. She'd pivoted behind him, using his momentum against him. Her arm snaked around his throat, not a choke, but a blood restriction, carotid artery compression. 7 seconds to unconsciousness, she said quietly in his ear. 3 if you struggle. He struggled. It took 4. Carlos had already collapsed from whatever Dr. Hayes had injected. Sedative from the aircraft medical kit, precisely dosed. The air marshal had Marcus covered while Sullivan secured him properly. In 12 seconds, it was over. But Hilda didn't relax. She moved to the cockpit, checking the instruments with practiced eyes. "Captain Hayes, your status?" "Green," Rebecca replied, though her hands shook. "We need to declare emergency and land immediately." "Negative." Hilda's fingers flew over the navigation computer, checking something. "Maintain current heading for 6 more minutes." "Why?" "Because in 6 minutes, we'll be over water. If they had a backup plan, if there's something we missed, better to be over water than land." She keyed the radio. "Falcon lead, Valkyrie 7, cabin secure, 4 packages wrapped for delivery." "Valkyrie 7, Falcon lead, outstanding. Package receipt confirmed on landing." "Denver International has been cleared." "Copy, Falcon lead." She paused, then added, "Tell Morrison. Tell command that Operation Blackbird is complete." There was a pause on the other end. "Valkyrie 7, Falcon lead. Colonel Morrison sends personal regards and says, quote, 'About time you came home,' unquote." The professional mask cracked for just a moment. Something deeply personal flickered across Hilda's features before she locked it down. The passengers had begun to realize the immediate danger had passed. Some cried with relief. Others remained frozen in shock. Parents hugged children. Strangers grasped hands. But Commander Sullivan approached Hilda with the measured respect of one warrior to another. "Air Force?" She nodded slightly. "Pilot?" Another nod. Those moves weren't pilot training. Cross-trained, Delta, then CIA paramilitary. She was checking Victor's pockets as she spoke, looking for additional weapons or intelligence. "How long have you been hunting them?" 18 months, 3 countries. This was their 4th attempt. She pulled out a sealed plastic bag with what looked like a USB drive. "And this is what they were really after." Sullivan's eyes widened. They weren't hijacking for money. The money was secondary. They needed to be captured publicly, on American soil, with this evidence of a larger plot. It would have triggered sleeper cells in 12 cities. She sealed the evidence in an evidence bag she had somehow produced. The hijacking was meant to be theater. The real attack comes later. "So, you let them take the plane?" "I didn't let them do anything. I made sure I was on the plane they chose." Difference in perspective. The math was staggering. She'd somehow identified their target, inserted herself into the crew, and waited for them to strike. Then she'd played victim until the perfect moment to reveal herself. "The kill marks," Sullivan said suddenly. "The 7 stars? Afghanistan?" She looked at him sharply. "You saw them? When Marcus tore your sleeve earlier, just a glimpse, but I know what A-10 drivers mark their kills with. 7 aircraft, 6 helicopters, and 1 MiG-21. Her voice carried no pride, just fact. "Close air support for troops in contact. Your unit, actually. Korengal Valley, August 2009. Sullivan's blood chilled. He remembered that day. Pinned down, surrounded, calling for air support. The A-10 that had saved them took impossible risks, flying below minimum safe altitude, taking ground fire, staying on station even after running low on fuel. That was you. That was my job." She turned away, clearly uncomfortable with recognition. Dr. Hayes approached, the pregnant woman beside her, no longer displaying any signs of distress. "She's actually one of ours, too," Hayes said quietly. "DEA undercover. We've been tracking Carlos for 6 months." The layers of the operation kept revealing themselves. This wasn't a hijacking that had been stopped. It was a carefully orchestrated trap that had been sprung. "How many assets are on this plane?" Sullivan asked. "Enough," Hilda replied. She moved back through the cabin, checking on passengers, her demeanor shifting back to something softer, less threatening. She knelt beside elderly veterans, speaking quietly. She comforted crying children with gentle touches. The warrior became a healer, but her shirt had torn further during the fight, and now the tattoo was fully visible. Not just an eagle with stars, the full insignia of the A-10, the warthog, with 7 red stars trailing behind it. Below, in small letters, Valkyrie 7, Death from Above. Passengers began to notice. Phones appeared, despite the earlier confiscation. Pictures were taken. Within minutes of landing, the image would be viral. The real flight attendant, Jennifer Martinez, approached hesitantly. "You're not really crew, are you?" "No," Hilda admitted. "I'm sorry for the deception." "Don't be. You saved us all." Jennifer looked at the unconscious hijackers. "How did you know they would pick this flight?" Pattern analysis. They always chose flights with specific passenger manifests, government contractors, military families, symbolic value. This flight had all three. And you've been doing this for 18 months? Someone has to. It wasn't bravado, just exhaustion. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the cost of constant vigilance was showing. Captain Hayes' voice came over the intercom, steady now, professional. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. The situation has been resolved. We'll be landing in Denver in approximately 30 minutes. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Emergency services will meet us at the gate. The normalcy of the announcement after what had just happened felt surreal, but that's how crisis resolved, not with fanfare, but with procedure. Hilda returned to the cockpit, taking the jump seat behind the pilots. Through the windscreen, the F-16s maintained formation, wings level, protective angels in aluminum. Colonel Morrison, Captain Hayes said carefully. Any relation? My father, Hilda admitted. He doesn't know I'm on this operation. He does now. Yeah. She stared out at the endless sky. He wanted me to stay in fighters, safe at 30,000 feet, dropping ordnance. But after Afghanistan, after seeing what ground forces faced, I couldn't stay up there. So, you came down here. Someone has to. The threats aren't always external. Sometimes the enemy is already inside, wearing our uniforms, using our training against us. She gestured at the unconscious Victor. He was Spetsnaz. Marcus was Army Rangers before his discharge. These aren't random criminals. They're trained warriors who turned. The weight of that statement settled over the cockpit. The idea that the skills meant to protect could be perverted to destroy. Rebecca Hayes had something else on her mind. The way you flew, the way you moved during turbulence. You have time on 7-3s? A ghost of a smile crossed Hilda's face. 600 hours. I transitioned to commercial ratings 2 years ago as part of my cover building. Had to be believable. You could have flown us home yourself if needed. That was the backup plan. The thought chilled both pilots. She'd been prepared to take control of a damaged aircraft with wounded crew and land it herself if necessary. The level of preparation was staggering. As Denver approached, the reality of landing set in. There would be debriefs, investigations, media attention. The quiet operative would be thrust into spotlight she'd spent years avoiding. I need to ask a favor, Hilda said suddenly. Anything, Captain Hayes replied immediately. When we land, can you make sure the families get off first? Before FBI and Homeland Security swarm the plane, some of these kids are traumatized. They need their parents, not interrogation. Even now, after everything, she was thinking of others. Sullivan heard this from his seat. He'd moved closer to secure the hijackers, but also to protect Hilda if needed. Warriors recognized their own. The descent began, ears popping as pressure changed. Below Denver International Airport sprawled across the prairie, runways like compass points marking civilization's attempt to organize chaos. The fighters peeled off as they entered controlled airspace, their job done. But Hilda knew they'd be back. The pilots would want to meet her, compare notes, share that bond only those who delivered death from above could understand. 10 minutes to landing. The hijackers were secured with zip ties and duct tape, still unconscious but breathing. The passengers had divided into two groups, those who wanted to forget this ever happened, and those who would tell this story forever. And in the middle sat Hilda Morrison, no longer hiding, no longer pretending. The simple flight attendant mask had shattered, revealing the complex truth beneath. Her phone, somehow still functioning despite everything, buzzed with an encrypted message. She read it, her expression darkening. "What is it?" Sullivan asked. She showed him the screen. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 initiating. Moscow confirms receipt. There's more? There's always more. She deleted the message and destroyed the SIM card with practiced efficiency. This was just the opening move. They wanted to be caught. What? Think about it. 4 trained operators with a solid plan, and they just happened to pick a flight with me on it? After 18 months of perfect operational security? She shook her head. They knew this was supposed to happen. The implications were staggering. The hijacking hadn't been prevented. It had been orchestrated at an even deeper level. By who? That's what Phase 2 determines. She stood, straightening her torn uniform as much as possible. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today we land safe. The gear deployed with a mechanical thunk, flaps extended. The runway rose to meet them, black asphalt scarred by thousands of previous landings, each one routine until it wasn't. Captain Hayes flew manually, her hands steady now. The aircraft touched down smooth as silk, all three gear kissing pavement simultaneously. The passengers erupted in spontaneous applause, that universal sound of relief when death passes by without collecting. As they taxied toward the gate, the scope of response became clear. FBI vehicles, Homeland Security, Denver police, ambulances, fire trucks, a small army waited. But also, standing apart in dress blues, an older man with 2 stars on his shoulders, General Morrison, waiting for his daughter. Hilda saw him through the cockpit window. Something shifted in her expression, vulnerability breaking through the professional armor. For all her skills, all her training, she was still someone's child coming home from war. "Go," Captain Hayes said gently. "We've got this." But Hilda shook her head. "Passengers first, always." She returned to the cabin one last time, helping elderly passengers stand, carrying bags for mothers with children, maintaining order as fear transformed into relief. The air marshal revealed himself, taking official custody of the hijackers. The DEA agent dropped her Pregnant Woman Act, badge now visible. One by one, passengers filed past Hilda. Some nodded. Some touched her arm. The mother of the crying child whispered, "Thank you," through tears. The elderly veteran stopped, straightened despite his arthritis, and saluted. She returned it, moisture gathering in her green eyes. Finally, only crew and law enforcement remained. Hilda stood at the aircraft door as FBI agents boarded, surrendering her improvised weapons, beginning the debrief that would last hours. But first, General Morrison climbed the air stairs. Father and daughter faced each other across 3 feet and 3 years of distance. "Hi, Dad." "Hilda," his voice cracked slightly, "you were supposed to be flying cargo routes in Germany. Plans changed. They always do with you." He pulled her into an embrace that spoke of fear realized and relief achieved. "Your mother would be proud. She would have hated this. She would have understood it." He pulled back, examining her injuries with paternal concern. "You need medical attention. I need a shower and 12 hours of sleep. You'll get both, after the debrief." He turned serious. "This isn't over, is it?" "No. This was contact. The real engagement comes next." They walked together toward the door, General Morrison's hand protective on her shoulder. At the top of the air stairs, they paused. Below, the assembled response teams waited. Beyond them, media vans were already arriving, the story beginning its transformation from reality to legend. "Ready?" her father asked. Hilda looked back at the aircraft cabin. Scene of violence transformed back into ordinary space. In a week, it would fly again, passengers never knowing what had happened in these seats, this aisle, this battlefield disguised as transportation. "I'm never ready," she admitted. "But I go anyway." They descended the stairs together, walking into the harsh afternoon light of consequences and questions. Behind them, United Flight 2847 sat empty except for ghosts of what might have been. The FBI interview room at Denver International Airport felt smaller than the aircraft cabin. Hilda sat across from Special Agent Rachel Torres, still wearing her torn United Airlines uniform, the blood on her collar now dried to rust brown. Her stunning features remained composed despite exhaustion, those distinctive freckles across her porcelain cheeks more pronounced under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Let's go through this again," Torres said, sliding a tablet across the table. "You've been tracking this cell for 18 months. 17 months and 23 days, Hilda corrected, her green eyes steady. "First contact was in Prague. They tried to hijack a Lufthansa flight. I was nearby." "Nearby meaning?" "Classified, but I prevented it, quietly. That's when I identified Viktor Volkov as the cell leader." Torres pulled up files on her screen. "And you've been following them since? Across how many countries?" 7. Czech Republic, Germany, Turkey, Jordan, Mexico, Canada, and finally here." Hilda shifted slightly, her ribs protesting from the earlier impacts. They always pulled back at the last moment, testing responses, learning protocols. Until today. Until today. Hilda accepted a cup of water from another agent, drinking carefully around her split lip. They finally committed. The question is why? General Morrison entered the room without knocking. 2 stars gave certain privileges. "Agent Torres, I need 5 minutes with my daughter." Torres looked ready to object, then thought better of it. 5 minutes, General." When they were alone, James Morrison studied his daughter's face. 3 years since he'd seen her in person. Video calls didn't capture the new hardness in her jaw, the hypervigilance in her posture, the way she positioned herself to watch all exits simultaneously. The truth, Hilda, all of it. She met his gaze directly. Operation Blackbird isn't just about stopping hijackings. It's about identifying a mole in our intelligence apparatus. Someone's been feeding operational details to terror cells. How high? We don't know. That's why I've been dark for so long. Official channels were compromised. She pulled out a small encrypted drive from a hidden pocket in her boot. This was Victor's insurance. Names, dates, classified operation codes that only someone with top secret clearance would know. Morrison's face darkened. You're talking about treason. I'm talking about someone in a position to get a lot of people killed. She stood, pacing despite the small space. Every mission that's gone wrong in the last 2 years, every ambush our special forces walked into, every blown cover that got assets killed, it all traces back to the same source pattern. And Victor knew who? Victor was going to reveal it publicly during the hijacking, create maximum chaos, destroy faith in our institutions. She stopped pacing, facing her father. But he didn't expect me. Morrison pulled her into another embrace, this one longer. Your mother would have done the same thing. Mom would have figured it out 6 months faster. Your mother was remarkable, so are you. He pulled back, examining her injuries again. Medical cleared you? Just bruising and lacerations. I've had worse in training. That's not what I meant. She understood. The physical wounds would heal, the psychological cost of constant deception, of living multiple lives, of being ready to kill or die at any moment, that was harder to quantify. I'm functional, Dad. That's not the same as okay. No, she admitted, it's not. A knock interrupted them. Agent Torres returned with a laptop showing news feeds. Colonel Morrison, you need to see this. The video had already gone viral. Shaky phone footage of Hilda taking down Victor, her tattoo visible, the moment of transformation from victim to warrior. The headline, Flight Attendant revealed as secret military operative saves 180 lives. So much for operational security, Morrison muttered. It might work in our favor, Hilda said, thinking tactically. If the mole thinks I'm blown, they might make a move. You're using yourself as bait? I'm adapting to circumstances. She turned to Torres. I need to interrogate Victor. He's in medical, still unconscious. Then Marcus. He'll be easier to break anyway. Torres hesitated. That's not exactly protocol. Agent Torres, General Morrison interrupted. Colonel Morrison has presidential authority for Operation Blackbird. Check your classified directives. Torres did, her eyes widening. I apologize, Colonel. Whatever you need. The interrogation room holding Marcus Jefferson was reinforced concrete and bulletproof glass. The former Army Ranger sat shackled to a metal table, the snake tattoo on his neck glistening with sweat. His eyes tracked Hilda as she entered, hatred radiating like heat. The fake flight attendant, he spat. Should have known. You moved too smooth. Hilda sat across from him, her posture relaxed but ready. Ranger Battalion, dishonorably discharged 2017. Silver Star recipient before you decided selling weapons to insurgents paid better. You don't know anything about me. I know you got 3 of your squad killed in Helmand because you were high on stolen morphine. I know you've been running guns through Mexico for the Sinaloa cartel. I know your ex-wife has a restraining order and your daughter hasn't spoken to you in 4 years. Each fact hit like a physical blow. Marcus's jaw clenched tighter with every word. I also know, Hilda continued, leaning forward slightly, that you're the weak link. Victor tolerates you because you're useful muscle, but he doesn't trust you with real intelligence. Diego thinks you're an amateur. Carlos actively despises you. You're trying to flip me. I'm offering you a choice. Federal supermax for the rest of your life. Or cooperation that might get you medium security with possibility of parole before you're 70. Marcus laughed bitterly. You think I'm afraid of prison? No, but you're afraid of Victor. Even unconscious, even captured, you're terrified he'll somehow reach you. She pulled out a tablet, showing Marcus footage from the plane. Look at your face when he gave orders. That's not respect. That's fear. You don't understand what he's capable of. Then tell me. Marcus struggled internally for a long moment. Then, it doesn't matter. In 6 hours, it'll be over anyway. Hilda's expression didn't change, but internally, alarm screamed. What happens in 6 hours? The real event. This was just the trigger. He leaned back, suddenly confident. You think you won? You played right into it. What event, Marcus? Check the news, Colonel. Check what's happening while everyone's focused on this feel-good story. Torres was already pulling up news feeds on her phone. Her face paled. Colonel, we have a problem. 17 government facilities just received identical packages. They're being evacuated. Hilda stood smoothly. Let me guess. All facilities with classified intelligence operations. How did you... Because the hijacking was never the point. It was misdirection. She turned back to Marcus. The packages are fake, aren't they? While everyone's evacuating, looking for bombs that don't exist, someone's inside stealing intelligence. Marcus's expression confirmed it. Who's the inside man, Marcus? Who's coordinating this? Above my pay grade, lady. I was just supposed to make noise, draw attention. He smiled coldly. Congratulations on stopping the diversion. Hilda left the interrogation room at a controlled pace that turned into a run once she hit the corridor. Her father was already on his encrypted phone, barking orders. Torres coordinated with FBI headquarters. The entire intelligence apparatus was mobilizing, but they were already behind. The evacuation procedures were automated, triggered by credible threats. Thousands of personnel were leaving their posts, their computers, their secured areas. In the chaos, someone with the right access could walk out with terabytes of classified data. We need to narrow it down, Hilda said, commandeering Torres's workstation. 17 facilities is too many. Which ones have the highest value intelligence? NSA Fort Meade, CIA Langley, DIA Bowling, Torres listed. But they're all fortress-level secure. Not during an evacuation. Everyone's focused on getting out, not what's being taken. Hilda's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up evacuation protocols. There, look at the timestamp. The packages were delivered simultaneously, but the evacuation orders came in sequence. Someone triggered them in a specific order. To control the chaos pattern, Morrison realized, maximize confusion at specific locations. Fort Carson, Hilda said suddenly. It's the outlier. Smallest facility, lowest priority, but it was evacuated third. Why? Torres pulled up the facility data. It houses the backup servers for NORAD's threat assessment database. Every terrorist on our watch list, every suspicious financial transaction, every flagged communication. Hilda stood. That's the real target. Everything else is noise. Fort Carson is 90 minutes from here, Morrison said. Not by helicopter. Hilda was already moving. Dad, I need aviation support. The F-16s? Something with doors I can jump out of. 20 minutes later, Hilda sat in the cargo bay of a UH-60 Blackhawk, pulling on tactical gear over her torn flight attendant uniform. The loadmaster watched with professional interest as she checked each piece of equipment with practiced efficiency. Ma'am, we'll be over Fort Carson in 12 minutes. Copy. She chambered around in the M4 carbine they'd provided, muscle memory from thousands of repetitions making the motion automatic. What's the situation on the ground? Evacuation complete, bomb squad searching the facility, local security maintaining perimeter, which meant whoever was inside had free run of the place. Hilda pulled up the facility schematics on a tablet, memorizing the layout. The server room was in the basement, 3 levels down, biometric security at each checkpoint. During evacuation, those checkpoints would be abandoned. Her phone buzzed, encrypted message from Torres. Marcus broke. The mole is military intelligence, codename Scorpion. No real name yet. Military intelligence. Someone who would know exactly which servers contained what data, how to access them, how to cover their tracks. Someone who might be at Fort Carson right now. The Blackhawk descended, Denver's sprawl giving way to military precision of Fort Carson below. The evacuation was visible from above, hundreds of personnel standing in designated assembly areas, emergency vehicles everywhere, organized chaos. There, Hilda pointed to the main intelligence building. Put me on that roof. Ma'am, we haven't been cleared for General Morrison's authority. Do it. The helicopter flared over the building, hovering 10 feet above the roof. Hilda jumped without hesitation, landing in a combat roll that her bruised ribs immediately protested. But pain was information, and information could be processed later. She moved to the roof access door, locked, but that was expected. The lock-picking tools in her vest made quick work of it. 3 minutes since the helicopter drop. If someone was inside stealing data, they'd be rushing now, aware that time was running out. The stairwell was dark, emergency lighting casting red shadows. Hilda moved down quickly, but cautiously. M4 at ready position. 2 floors down, she heard it. The distinctive hum of servers and a metallic clicking that didn't belong. She slowed, switching to silent movement. The door to the server floor was propped open. Through the gap, she could see rows of black server towers and a figure in military uniform hunched over a terminal. External drives connected to multiple ports. The uniform bore Colonel's insignia. The name tape read Harrison. She recognized the profile. Colonel David Harrison, Defense Intelligence Agency, with 30 years of service and access to everything. Scorpion. Hilda considered her options. Take him down hard and fast, risk destroying evidence, or confirm the intelligence theft first, ensure they could trace what was taken. Harrison made the choice for her. Without turning, he said, "Colonel Morrison, I wondered when you'd arrive." She kept the M4 trained on him. "Step away from the terminal, Colonel Harrison." In 43 seconds, the download completes. Then we can discuss this like civilized officers. He finally turned, revealing a face she'd seen in a dozen briefings. Trusted, decorated, a traitor. "You know, your mother was the same way, always arriving at the worst possible moment." Hilda's blood chilled. "You knew my mother?" Captain Sarah Morrison, brilliant intelligence analyst. She discovered irregularities in my network 6 years ago. Harrison's smile was cold. "Pity about that training accident." The world tilted. Her mother's death ruled accidental aircraft malfunction during a routine training flight. No suspicion of sabotage. No investigation beyond standard procedures. You killed her. I protected a 20-year operation that has saved American lives by maintaining balance between powers. Your mother threatened that balance with her Boy Scout morality. Hilda's finger found the trigger, a pound of pressure away from vengeance. "Shoot me, and you'll never know how deep this goes," Harrison continued calmly. "How many operations? How many assets? How many supposedly loyal Americans have been playing both sides since the Cold War ended? Why?" The word came out raw. "Because peace is bad for business, Colonel. Conflict drives innovation, funding, purpose. Without enemies, what are warriors like us worth?" He gestured at the servers. "I don't sell to terrorists. I manage them. Control the threat level. Keep it just dangerous enough to justify our existence, but not enough to cause real damage. Tell that to the soldiers who died in ambushes you enabled. Acceptable losses to prevent nuclear war, biological attacks, true catastrophes. I trim the weeds, Colonel. I don't let the garden burn." The download bar on his screen reached 98%. "Besides," Harrison added, "in 30 seconds, a dead man's switch triggers. If I don't input a code, this entire server room burns. Thermite charges in the walls. You might survive, but the evidence won't. You're bluffing. Check the wall panels. See those white strips? Thermite ribbon, military grade." He held up a phone showing a countdown timer. 20 seconds. Hilda made the calculation. Save the evidence or stop the download. Can't do both. She shot the terminal. Sparks erupted as bullets shredded circuits and drives. Harrison dove aside, surprisingly agile for his age. The download died at 99%. So, close to complete that recovery might be possible. 10 seconds! Harrison shouted, scrambling for cover. Hilda spotted the thermite ribbons. He wasn't bluffing. She sprinted for the door as Harrison's timer hit 0. Nothing happened. She stopped, turned back. Harrison stood slowly, confusion on his face, as he checked his phone. "Dead man's switches need live men to set them," Hilda said. "Your technical support, Marcus, is in custody. He gave you up for a plea deal." Harrison's face went pale as he realized he had been outmaneuvered. "The download you almost completed? It was traced in real time by NSA. Every file you accessed, logged. Every backdoor you used, recorded." She kept the rifle trained on him as she approached. "You just gave us the roadmap to your entire network. You don't understand what you've done," Harrison said desperately. "Without management, these groups will run wild. Unchecked terrorism, mass casualties. We'll manage. The legal way. The honorable way." She pulled out zip-tie cuffs. "Colonel David Harrison, you're under arrest for treason, espionage, and murder." As she secured his hands, he made one last attempt. "Your mother would have understood eventually. The greater good requires terrible choices. My mother would have shot you on sight." She cinched the cuffs tighter than necessary. "I'm more merciful." The next hours blurred together. Harrison's arrest triggered cascading investigations. The stolen data he'd accessed revealed a network of compromised assets across multiple agencies. Not all were traitors. Some were blackmailed. Some were unwitting sources. Some simply had their communications intercepted. The 17 fake bomb threats had been Harrison's innovation, using Victor's hijacking as cover. If Hilda hadn't been on that plane, if the hijacking had succeeded in its full theatrical presentation, Harrison would have had hours more to complete his theft. Back at FBI headquarters, Hilda sat in a conference room as the magnitude of the operation became clear. 23 individuals arrested across 4 agencies. 6 terror plots that Harrison had been managing now required immediate intervention. Decades of intelligence compromise being unraveled. "We need you to testify," Director Patterson said. "Closed session, Senate Intelligence Committee." "When?" "Tomorrow, 2010 hours. She nodded, exhaustion finally showing. Her father had been right. She needed medical attention and rest. But first, one more interrogation. Viktor Volkov had regained consciousness. Secured in the medical wing, surrounded by federal marshals, he looked smaller than he had on the plane. The head injury from Hilda's blood choke had left him with a spectacular black eye and dizzy spells. "Colonel Morrison," he said in accented English. "The warrior reveals herself. Why did you choose that specific flight, Victor?" "Orders. Harrison said you would be there. He set you up, used you as a distraction." Victor processed this, his face darkening. "I am nobody's pawn. You were today. Your brother Dmitri is dead, by the way. Killed in a raid on his boat in Havana 2 hours ago." She watched his reaction carefully. "Your entire network has been rolled up." "Lies." She showed him the photos on her tablet. Dimitri's body. Their weapons cache is seized. Bank accounts frozen. The complete destruction of everything they'd built. Victor's composure finally cracked. Harrison promised safe extraction. Promised new identities. Harrison promised whatever kept you useful, just like he did to the 7 other groups he was running. She leaned forward. "Help us understand his network, and maybe you don't spend life in Supermax." "What guarantees?" "None. You took 180 people hostage. You traumatized children. You threatened to execute innocent civilians." Her green eyes were ice cold. "The only reason you're breathing is because we're not you." She left him to think about that, returning to the conference room where her debrief continued. The media had picked up the story now, not just the hijacking, but the larger conspiracy. News channels ran split screens of her Air Force photo next to the flight attendant image. The contrast was striking. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages she didn't read. Friends from her squadron days, fellow pilots, people she had served with in Afghanistan, all wanting to know if she was okay, if the stories were true, if she was really the one who'd saved the flight. The conference room had a window overlooking the Denver skyline. Sunset painted the mountains purple and gold, beautiful and peaceful, no sign of the violence that had erupted at 35,000 feet. Subscribe to see next week's story, a surgeon who turns out to be an elite sniper when her hospital is taken hostage. Agent Torres brought her coffee and a sandwich. "You should eat." "Thanks." Hilda took a bite mechanically, barely tasting it. "How are the passengers?" "All debriefed and released. Most are at hotels tonight, flying home tomorrow." Torres paused. "Commander Sullivan wants to see you, and that trauma surgeon, Dr. Hayes. Send them in." Sullivan entered first, now in civilian clothes, but still carrying himself like the SEAL he was. Dr. Hayes followed, looking exhausted but determined. "We wanted to thank you," Sullivan said simply. "You saved our lives. You helped, both of you. The synchronized takedown doesn't happen without your assistance." "We improvised," Hayes said. "You planned. There's a difference." They sat together, 3 people who'd shared combat and survived. The conversation turned to technical details, how Hilda had identified the hijackers' patterns, how she'd maintained her cover for so long, how she'd prepared for dozens of contingencies. "The pregnancy thing was brilliant," Hilda told Hayes. "Completely sold the misdirection. DEA's idea. They've been tracking Carlos through his pregnant girlfriend. When they heard about the hijacking, they inserted Agent Ramirez." Hayes smiled tiredly. "She's actually pregnant, just not in distress. Risky. Everything about today was risky." Sullivan had been quiet, studying Hilda with the assessment of a fellow operator. "You've been under for almost 2 years. No backup, no support, hunting alone. Someone had to. That's not sustainable. You know that, right? The The isolation, the constant vigilance, it breaks people. She met his gaze. It breaks everyone eventually. The question is whether you complete the mission first. And after, when there's no mission? She didn't have an answer for that. For 18 months, the mission had been everything. Now, with Harrison arrested and the network exposed, she faced a void. Her phone rang. General Morrison. "Hilda, you need to see the news." She turned on the conference room screen. CNN was showing aerial footage of Fort Carson with the banner, "Decorated Colonel Arrested for Treason, Linked to Hijacking Plot." But it was the secondary headline that made her blood run cold. Source claims more deep cover assets still active. Harrison's insurance policy, she realized. He's leaked just enough to make everyone paranoid. Every intelligence officer would now be viewed with suspicion. Every military operation second-guessed. The damage to institutional trust would take years to repair. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Unknown sender. She almost dismissed it, then noticed the authentication code, one only her mother would have known. The message was simple. Blackbird files incomplete. Check Prometheus archive. Olympus. Olympus had been her mother's call sign. "I have to go," she told Sullivan and Hayes. "Go where?" Sullivan asked. "To finish what my mother started." The Prometheus archive was a classified database that supposedly didn't exist. Her mother had mentioned it once, years ago, describing it as where the real secrets lived. If Harrison had been managing terrorist groups for 20 years, that's where the evidence would be. But accessing it would require resources and authority she no longer had. Her Operation Blackbird credentials would be revoked within hours now that the immediate threat was contained. General Morrison met her in the parking garage. "You got the message too? Mom had a backup plan?" "Your mother always had backup plans." He handed her a keycard. "This will get you into Cheyenne Mountain. Archive access is biometric. It has to be you." "Dad, if I do this, you'll be completely off the books. No official support. If you're caught, the government will disavow you." "So, Tuesday." He didn't smile. "Hilda, Harrison was right about one thing. This network is bigger than just him. Prometheus might tell us how big." She took the keycard. "I'll need equipment." "Already in the vehicle." He gestured to a nondescript Toyota Camry. "Untraceable. Full tactical loadout in the trunk." She hugged him, longer than usual. "If something happens, it won't." "Dad, I know. Your mother would be proud. I'm proud." The drive to Cheyenne Mountain took 90 minutes through dark mountain roads. Hilda's mind processed the day's events, looking for patterns, anomalies. Harrison had been too prepared, too confident. Even caught, he'd seemed more annoyed than afraid. The mountain loomed against stars, the famous NORAD facility built to survive nuclear war. But she wasn't going to the main complex. The Prometheus archive was in a separate tunnel, older, dating back to the Cold War's darkest days. The keycard got her past the first checkpoint. Guards who should have questioned a lone woman arriving at night simply nodded as their screens flashed green, her mother's authorization, somehow still active 6 years after her death. The archive entrance was hidden behind what looked like a maintenance panel. Hilda's palm print opened it, which shouldn't have been possible. She'd never been registered in this system, unless her mother had registered her, planning for this possibility. The tunnel beyond was narrow, lit by emergency lighting that cast everything in red shadows. At the end, a vault door that belonged in a bank, not a military facility. Retinal scan, voice recognition. Finally, a DNA sampler that pricked her finger. "Identity confirmed," a computerized voice announced. "Welcome, Colonel Morrison. Your mother is expecting you." Impossible. Her mother had been dead for 6 years. The vault door opened onto a small room filled with servers and a single workstation. On the screen, a video file was already queued. Her mother's face appeared, recorded years ago, but looking directly at her. "Hello, Hilda. If you're seeing this, then Harrison finally made his move, and you stopped him. I'm proud of you, sweetheart." Tears Hilda didn't know she'd been holding back suddenly flowed. But Harrison is just middle management. The real controllers call themselves the Board. 7 individuals across government, military, and intelligence who've been orchestrating conflicts since the Soviet Union fell. They believe in perpetual controlled warfare as humanity's natural state. The video continued for 12 minutes, her mother laying out everything she'd discovered. Names, dates, operations. The hijacking today had been planned years ago as a contingency. Even Hilda's recruitment into Operation Blackbird had been anticipated. "They'll try to recruit you now," her mother's recording continued. "With Harrison gone, they need someone with your skills. They'll appeal to your pragmatism, your warrior nature. They'll make it sound logical, even noble." The recording paused, then her mother leaned closer to the camera. "Don't listen. Don't become them. The moment we accept that peace requires perpetual war, we've already lost." The screen changed to files, thousands of them. Every operation the board had run, every asset they'd burned, every innocent death they'd justified as necessity. At the bottom, a single folder labeled Current Operations. Hilda opened it, her blood chilling as she read. 17 active plots across 6 countries. 3 scheduled for next week, all managed, controlled, designed to create specific political outcomes. But there was more. A file titled Valkyrie Contingency, her codename. She opened it to find her entire life mapped out. Her Air Force career, her recruitment to intelligence, even her relationship patterns. They'd been watching her since the academy, grooming her to eventually replace Harrison. The hijacking hadn't been random. They knew she'd be on that plane because they'd psychologically profiled her, predicted her choices based on years of observation. They'd counted on her stopping it, using that victory to build her legend, to make her valuable enough that they could reveal themselves and recruit her. A new message appeared on the screen, real time, not recorded. "Colonel Morrison, this is the board. We're impressed. Your mother took 6 years to find this archive. You took 6 hours." She typed back, "You killed her." "Harrison killed her. We simply didn't prevent it. There's a difference." Semantics. Reality. "We don't create evil, Colonel. We channel it. Without us, those 17 plots you're reading about would happen anyway, but uncontrolled. Thousands would die instead of dozens. You're justifying murder. We're preventing genocide. Every war we've managed has stopped a larger conflict. Every terrorist we've controlled has prevented a worse actor from rising." Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. The logic was seductive, especially to someone who'd seen the worst of human nature. Another message. "Check file 7. Rwanda, 1994. She opened it. Evidence that the board had tried to prevent the genocide, failed, and learned from that failure. Their controlled conflicts since then had prevented 3 similar ethnic cleansings. "Still murder," she typed, "but less murder. Isn't that what soldiers do? Kill some to save others?" She thought of Afghanistan, of dropping bombs on buildings, knowing civilians might be inside, to save troops on the ground. The mathematics of war were never clean. "We're not offering you Harrison's position," the message continued. "We're offering you the truth, full access, the ability to shape policy rather than just execute it." A new file appeared, Operation Prometheus. Inside, detailed plans to prevent a nuclear exchange between India and Pakistan by orchestrating a smaller conflict that would release tensions without triggering full war. Estimated casualties, 3,000. Estimated lives saved, 12 million. "This launches in 72 hours, the board typed. "Without management, it becomes nuclear war within 6 months. Your choice, Colonel." Hilda stared at the screen, paralyzed. Stop them and potentially allow nuclear war. Join them and become what she'd spent 2 years fighting. Her mother's voice echoed from the recording. "Don't become them." But her mother hadn't seen these files, hadn't faced this choice with specific lives in the balance. She pulled out her phone, calling the only person she trusted completely. "Dad." "Hilda, where are you?" "Prometheus Archive. Mom was right about everything. But Dad, they're showing me things. Decisions I don't know how to make." Silence for a moment. Then, "Your mother faced the same choice. She chose to walk away and fight them openly. It cost her everything. What would you do?" "I'm not you, sweetheart. But I know this. The moment we accept that evil is necessary, we stop trying to find better solutions." The screen flashed. 60 seconds to decide, Colonel. Join us, or we disappear forever, and Operation Prometheus proceeds without management. Hilda's hands hovered over the keyboard. 3,000 lives versus 12 million. The needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few. Cold mathematics that made perfect logical sense. She typed her response. "I need proof, not files. Active verification that your predictions are accurate. Smart, check your phone." A video file appeared. Satellite footage of Pakistani military forces mobilizing. Indian response units activating. The preliminary moves toward conflict that the public wouldn't see for weeks. We can stop this, the board messaged, or we can let it proceed naturally. Your choice. Everything in her training said to accept, to infiltrate, to learn more before acting. But her mother's voice kept echoing. Don't become them. She made her decision. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, not typing a response but executing commands her mother had hidden in the video file. A virus, dormant for 6 years, activated throughout the Prometheus system. What are you doing? The board typed frantically. What my mother started. Exposure. Every file in the archive began uploading simultaneously to secure servers at the Washington Post, New York Times, Guardian, and a dozen other news organizations. Not just the crimes, but the justifications, the cold mathematics of managed death. You're condemning millions. I'm trusting humanity to find better solutions when they know the truth. The uploads completed in 3 minutes. 6 years of her mother's planning executed in moments. The board's screens would be lighting up with alerts, their careful secrecy shattered. The archive's self-destruct triggered. Of course they'd prepared for this contingency. Hilda ran for the exit as servers began melting behind her, thermite charges turning decades of secrets into slag. She emerged from the mountain to find her father waiting, with a full tactical team. The uploads worked, he said. Every major news organization just received the biggest intelligence leak in history. The board? Scattering. Some will run, some will surrender, some will fight. He handed her tactical gear. This isn't over. I know. She looked back at the mountain, smoke now rising from hidden vents as the archive destroyed itself. Mom would say I did the right thing. Your mother would say you did the only thing, trusting people with the truth, however terrible. Within hours, the news broke worldwide. The existence of the board, their managed conflicts, their cold calculations of acceptable death. Governments fell, alliances shattered. But also in places where conflict had been brewing, parties stepped back, realizing they'd been manipulated. The Pakistani and Indian forces stood down, their leaders understanding they'd been pushed toward war by outside forces. The 17 plots the board had been managing were exposed and prevented through conventional law enforcement. Not without cost. Some violence occurred, unmanaged, chaotic. But far less than the board had predicted. Humanity, given the truth, chose better than the controllers had believed possible. Hilda testified before Congress, the UN, the International Criminal Court. She became the face of the revelation, the warrior who'd chosen transparency over control, but that was all public. In private, she grieved. For her mother, killed for discovering the truth. For the innocents who died in managed conflicts. For the simple world she'd believed in, before learning how deep the corruption went. 6 months later, she stood at her mother's grave at Arlington. The headstone now bore the truth. Captain Sarah Morrison, killed in action, revealed the truth. Commander Sullivan joined her. They'd stayed in touch, bonding over shared combat and shared disillusionment. Any regrets? He asked. Every day. 3,000 people died in Kashmir because I didn't let the board manage that conflict. But 12 million didn't die in nuclear war because the exposure made both governments step back. The mathematics work. Doesn't mean I sleep well. Her phone buzzed. Not the encrypted phone anymore. She'd destroyed that. Just a normal message on a normal phone from her father. Family dinner Sunday? She smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. Want to get a drink? God, yes, Sullivan replied. They walked away from the grave together, 2 warriors learning to live in a peace they had helped create but didn't quite trust. Behind them, the headstone stood in silent testimony to the cost of truth. That night, Hilda sat in a Denver bar, watching the news. The world was messy, chaotic, real. No invisible hands managing the chaos, just humanity stumbling forward, making mistakes, occasionally getting things right. Her phone rang, an unknown number. Colonel Morrison? The voice was electronically disguised. I'm retired. The board is gone, but their projects remain. Someone needs to prevent those conflicts, just legally, transparently. Will you help? She thought of her mother's warning, her father's wisdom, the weight of mathematics that determined who lived and died. Send me the files. I'll review them, but any action goes through proper channels. Congress, UN, legitimate oversight. That could take too long. People could die. People die anyway. At least this way, it's honest. The call ended. Within minutes, encrypted files arrived. 17 conflicts brewing worldwide, each preventable with the right intervention, each requiring someone with her skills to stop. She opened the first file. Syria, chemical weapons being moved by a splinter group. Intervention window, 48 hours. She called her father. Dad, I need a favor. Contact at State Department who won't ask too many questions. You're going back in? Never left, just changing the rules. 2 days later, she sat in a situation room at the Pentagon, officially reinstated as a special advisor. The Syria situation had been resolved through diplomatic pressure and targeted sanctions. No violence, no managed conflict, just patient, legal intervention. It was slower than the board's methods, messier, less certain, but it was honest. After the briefing, she found herself back on a commercial flight, this time as a passenger. The flight attendant who served her drinks had no idea who she was, what had happened on a similar plane months ago. Halfway through the flight, turbulence hit. Hilda didn't even grip the armrest, her body automatically adjusting to the aircraft's movement. Some training never left. The businessman next to her noticed. Military? Former. Thank you for your service. Just doing my job. He returned to his newspaper, which carried yet another story about the board revelations. The headline, 6 months later, world adjusts to new reality of transparent intelligence. Not everyone had adjusted. 3 board members had been arrested, 2 had disappeared, 2 had committed suicide rather than face trial. Harrison was serving life in federal prison, spending his days writing manifestos about necessary evil that no one read. Viktor Volkov had been convicted, but cooperated enough to avoid death penalty. He'd revealed 12 other cells the board had been managing. Each revelation prevented violence, but also exposed the depth of manipulation. Marcus Jefferson had gotten his deal, medium security, possibility of parole in 20 years. He'd found religion in prison, though Hilda suspected that was another manipulation, another angle to work. Diego and Carlos had been extradited to face charges in their home countries. Neither would see freedom again. The plane landed smoothly at Denver International. Hilda collected her single bag and walked through the same terminal where she'd been detained 6 months ago. No one recognized her. The viral video had faded from public memory, replaced by new crises, new revelations. Outside, her father waited in his personal truck. How was Washington? Political? They want to create a new agency for preventing managed conflicts. They want you to run it? They want me to build it. She climbed into the passenger seat. Full transparency, congressional oversight, no black operations. Sounds like bureaucratic hell. Sounds like what democracy actually looks like. They drove toward the mountains, the same route she'd taken to the Prometheus archive. But this time, they turned off toward a small cabin her father had bought after her mother's death. I've been thinking about Mom, Hilda said. Me too. Every day. She knew, didn't she, that stopping the board would cause chaos, maybe more death than they prevented. She knew, but she also knew that freedom is messy. Peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's choosing not to weaponize it. The cabin sat beside a lake that reflected the mountains like a mirror. Inside, Hilda found boxes of her mother's research, preserved by her father. Not the classified material, that had been turned over. But the personal notes, the philosophy, the struggle to understand. One note, dated a week before her death. Hilda will face this choice someday. I pray she chooses truth over control, chaos over managed evil. I pray she's stronger than I am. Hilda held the note, finally letting herself fully grieve. Not just for her mother, but for the simple world she'd lost. The clear enemies and clean missions that no longer existed. Her phone buzzed, the new encrypted phone from the provisional agency. Another brewing conflict, this time in Southeast Asia. Former board assets trying to trigger ethnic violence. She looked at her father. I have to go. I know, your mother would be proud. Would she? I'm doing exactly what the board did, just with paperwork and oversight. No, sweetheart. You're doing what they claim to do, preventing violence. But you're doing it honestly, legally, accepting that sometimes you'll fail. The mathematics, are never clean. Your mother knew that. She chose messy truth over clean lies. Hilda stood, already planning the mission. Legal authority would take 3 days to obtain. Transportation and assets, another 2. The window for prevention was 5 days. It would be close. As she prepared to leave, her father handed her something. Her mother's wings, the ones she'd worn as an Air Force pilot. She would want you to have these. Hilda pinned them inside her jacket, over her heart. hidden but present, like the truth itself. The drive back to Denver was quiet, both of them lost in thought. At the airport, her father pulled her into a final embrace. "Come back safe. Always do." "Liar," she smiled, the expression finally reaching her green eyes. "I learned from the best." The flight to Bangkok left at midnight. Hilda sat in economy, reading files on her tablet. Around her, passengers slept or watched movies, unaware that the woman in the seat 23C was heading off to prevent a war. No dramatic hijacking this time, no hidden identity, just patient, legal, transparent work to stop violence before it started. Her phone showed one final message from an unknown number. "The board is gone, but the idea remains. Someone will always believe that evil is necessary for good. Be ready." She deleted the message without responding. The board, or what remained of it, was right. The temptation to control, to manage, to accept necessary evil would always exist. But so would people like her mother, like her, who chose the harder path of messy freedom over clean tyranny. The plane flew on through the night, carrying its passengers toward their various futures. In seat 23C, Colonel Hilda Morrison, daughter of heroes, soldier of truth, closed her eyes and finally slept peacefully. Tomorrow, there would be new threats, new choices, new mathematics of life and death. But tonight, she was just another passenger on just another flight, heading toward another chance to choose truth over control. The flight attendant passed by, offering drinks. She had the same nervous energy Hilda had once projected, the same careful attention to passenger needs. "Anything to drink, ma'am?" Hilda looked at her, young, eager, innocent of the world's darker truths. "Just water, thank you." As the attendant moved on, Hilda noticed something. The way she walked, the way she observed passengers, the subtle scan for threats, training hidden beneath service. Another operative, another hidden warrior, or just someone naturally vigilant? She chose not to investigate. Some secrets were worth keeping, some identities worth protecting. The world needed its hidden guardians, its quiet protectors. Her phone buzzed one last time, a message from Jake Sullivan. "Made it home safe. Thanks for the truth, even when it hurt." She typed back, "Truth always hurts. That's how you know it's real." The plane flew on toward dawn, toward Bangkok, toward another prevented crisis that the world would never know about. In seat 23C, Hilda Morrison finally found what had eluded her for 2 years: peace with her choices. Her mother had been right. Truth was messy, dangerous, uncertain, but it was also human, honest, and ultimately the only foundation for real peace. The cabin lights dimmed for overnight flying. Hilda pulled out the worn photo she always carried, her mother in her flight suit, standing beside an F-16, smiling at the camera with the confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was and what she stood for. "I chose truth, Mom," she whispered, "just like you taught me." Outside the window, the world turned below, 7 billion people living their lives, most unaware of how close they'd come to manage catastrophe or chaotic destruction. They'd never know about the board, about Prometheus, about the mathematics that had nearly determined their fates. But they were free to make their own mistakes, find their own solutions, stumble toward their own peace. That was the gift her mother had died for, the gift Hilda had chosen to protect, the messy, beautiful, terrible freedom of truth. The flight continued through the night. Somewhere over the Pacific, the sun would rise on a new day, new challenges, new choices. Hilda Morrison would be ready for them all.
Thank you for watching REV Story. This channel shares stories of simple women who were often underestimated. So, if you enjoy quiet strength and powerful story, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and stay with us. See you soon in the next story.